Alrighty. Still looks like it's playing though. We'll see how this goes.
Alrighty.
And it looks like I have some crossover here. Okay. So, welcome to the live stream for Arcade Heroes, as this is a test. In part, I'm testing because I've had to, well, I got a new PC recently, and so you have to go through and redo all of your options and such. And so I had to rediscover how to set up a countdown and all that. It didn't automatically go over to the scene, which is what I wanted it to do. But there is an echo. Let me see here. That's why we do this, is because we want to stop that from happening. How does that sound? Just doing some adjustments to make sure it's also not too loud. Yes, it is dark because I'm in my arcade and there isn't any overhead lighting. And I did try to increase the exposure of the camera. It goes into like 5 frames a second. And so unless I can find some additional lighting here to add, then I'll probably be dark. But I'm not what's important here. What's important is the news and all that stuff. And so, as mentioned, we soon have a preview for IAAPA 2025, which is a giant trade show. I'm not sure, but I think it's either equivalent to what E3 was at its peak, or it's even bigger, because it caters to not just the amusement industry, but also the arcade industry, but the broader amusement industry, which includes stuff like theme parks, which that includes tons of stuff such as rides and all that jazz. And so, thank you, Jason. And so, that part of the reason I'm doing this right now is because I wanted to test everything and get that out of the way, get any bugs, kinks out of the system before we did the big IAPA preview. I've done those in previous years. There was one year where things just didn't work out really well, and I had to restart the stream several times. So far, it looks like it's doing well. Thank you, Jason, for who's a member. A super arcade hero, in fact, for commenting on there. If there's anything else that pops up during this stream that isn't on par with where things should be, then let me know, and hopefully I can get it corrected so that way when we do the actual live stream for IAPA, we'll be good to go and won't have any hiccups. Now, I am in my arcade right now, which is inside of a mall. I'm supposed to be open. I am open. However, the mall is dead. And so, as it has been a lot lately, and I guess, I don't know if I should be careful in saying this or not for local competitors or anything that happen to watch this, but I am looking at moving out of where I'm at because this mall is just died. The management is not doing a good job at bringing people into the mall, whereas I go to other places in the state. I'm in Salt Lake City. I go to other malls, and they're just jam-packed busy on a Wednesday or a Thursday like this, and it's been kind of on a downward trend for the past couple of years, and it's just getting to the point where it's like I feel like I really need to get out of here. And a part of that is I have a giant FEC competitor, multi-million-dollar facility down the hall. They have bowling, they have a big arcade, they have laser tag, and they have a bar and all this other stuff. And ever since they opened up, things have just never been the same as what they were. And so I should say, again, I am in the process of looking. One thing I have been sure about is if I should do like a crowdfunding effort to help raise some funds so that we can not only find a good spot, but also help us build it out into being something even cooler. I don't know how I feel about that and whatnot, but I guess just throw it out there if anybody be interested in donating towards that. Could be interesting, I guess, but if not, I'll find a way to make it work. I'd rather do something along those lines and keep the arcade going rather than close. But yeah, just things have not been looking great here. And for those who've followed me for a while, you've probably noticed the past few years, really since 2022, I've been having this frequent complaint where it's just like, man, things are just very uneven. Business is not the greatest, and it's really frustrating when you go around and you go to other places in the state where it's like, man, business is good. This other place, there's lots of cars here, there's lots of customers here, but they're not coming into where I do business. And so yeah. Of course, that's something, Jason, where it's like it's a bit of a nightmare. It's not very fun to move games. Like I used to go to what used to be called the Salt Lake Comic Con, and then it got changed to FanX, or the FanX Salt Lake Comic Convention, I think is what it is. Hey, Ted. And that was fun and cool and made a little bit of money, but at the same time, it was such a stressful headache because loading up a full 26-foot box truck with games just to take them downtown Salt Lake City and unload them off the truck, move them into the place, and then after a couple of days, move everything back into the arcade, and then managing that site and managing the arcade at the same time was, like I said, bit stressful. Probably removed some of the hair that I'm not getting back unless I get Rogaine. But anyways, again, if you're just here, welcome. This is not the IAPA live stream. This is a test, but I'm going to talk about some arcade news. And so let's get into what we just posted this morning, which is the Japan Amusement Expo 2025, a preview of that. And so for the longest time, I don't know the exact history behind it as to how long they've been doing their own trade shows over in Japan that are focused on the arcade industry there. Would assume decades. For a long time, they did it in February, but a few years ago, or maybe it was a couple years ago, they changed the name and then they moved it to November. And for some bizarre reason, they moved it right up against where this IAPA show is. Now, for some, that might not be a problem over in Japan, but for the multinational companies where they do business overseas and they want to attend IAPA or they have a booth at IAPA, it was extremely difficult. I know in the case of exA-Arcadia, they literally, as soon as they closed the show there, the staff that was coming to the States for IAPA had to leave immediately, get on a plane, fly something like 22 hours, and then come straight to Orlando, set up there, and then do the show. And so it's like basically no time to rest whatsoever, just very bad timing. And in fact, exA-Arcadia is not at JAPO or Japan Amusement Expo this year because of that. And so they will be at IAPA. I don't have, I know what they're bringing to the show, to the IAPA show. That's right. Thank you, Ted. So yeah, there was AOU and then there was JAMA. I think JAMA was the one that was pretty big for a very long time and they merged. And so, yeah, thank you for reminding me about that history. It's like I know about this because I've reported on it over the many years, but just kind of spaced out the details there. But either way, as I was saying, exA-Arcadia will be at IAPA. They'll be a part of our preview. Hopefully they'll be unlocking their news for what's going to be available at IAPA before we do our giant preview. But if not, then I guess we'll just cover them later on. But either way, they're going to have a lot of games, a lot of new games, and not just fighting games, some shoot-'em-up games and some other stuff. A new variation on the ARC-32 that y'all might be interested in. But anyways, we're supposed to be talking about the Japan Amusement Expo. Bandai Namco Amusements, which they are supposed to be changing, or they have changed their name slightly for their arcade division to Bandai Namco Experiences. Although I haven't been seeing that consistently used yet. Like even here where you look at this render image of what their booth looks like, it doesn't say Bandai Namco Experiences, it just says Bandai Namco. Okay. But they've been known as Bandai Namco Amusements America and Amusements Europe for a long time, which is a little bit of a mouthful. And so I think Experiences is just supposed to consolidate a lot of that into one thing, and then we could call it BNE or something like that. So we did a preview of what they're bringing to IAPA the other day, which includes Speed Rider 40X, a new motorcycle racing game developed by IGS. They also are starting to work with a Chinese company called Super Win, although sometimes they go by Super Wing. It's kind of hard to know which one they want to use, but their logo doesn't have the G at the end, so I guess it's supposed to be Super Win. Where they'll have a sci-fi shoot-'em-up game called The Future, as well as Mini World, which is basically Chinese Minecraft. And I guess it's big over there. But also, one thing that's been getting a lot of attention, and maybe some of you have discovered the channel through our very recent video of the Resident Evil 2 Deadshot footage that was shot on location. And all that, so that will not be at this expo unless there's just a big surprise that they decide to do. But by all indicators I've received is that the Resident Evil game is likely not going to ship until the end of 2026. And so a year from now, when we're doing a preview for IAPA 2026, very likely it would be a headliner at Bandai Namco's booth, as well as maybe showing up at the Japan Amusement Expo, which from what I hear is actually going to move the times. I guess they got enough complaints from different attendees that they will move it to the summertime. But I don't know if that's been officially announced yet, so it might still be in flux. But, I mean, I doubt anybody from there is listening, but it's like, yeah, I would really incentivize you or if I could in some way, or just push you to move the dates, because you shouldn't stack trade shows on top of each other, especially when they're on opposite ends of the planet. Anyways, what Bandai Namco will have at their booth is their one-piece punching game, this one-piece coin pusher game with a wheel inside of it. They're bringing a car on site, and the reason they're bringing a car on site is because they are going to have what is not called Maximum Tune 7, but is essentially Maximum Tune 7. It's Wangan Midnight Speed Ignition. Got to be careful. I'm going to call it Speed Edition or something. But we've been seeing that on test over in Japan. I did post out an X post a little while ago that caught the attention of I think it was the director, the producer of the Wangan Midnight, or I'll call it Maximum Tune 7, and about testing this in the States, and again, it caught his attention and some other Japanese media there, but I have not heard of any tests for Maxitune 7 yet outside of Japan. Now, years ago, before I think even 6 had been, or I think just as 6 had been announced or was rolling out, Namco had told me that the intention was to release 7 worldwide. That would include Europe. But that was before the pandemic and everything, so it's very possible that could have changed. I hope not. It would be nice to see this Speed Ignition game getting some worldwide coverage. I know over in Europe they've really been wanting to have the latest versions of Maximum Tune around. Officially, the last time they got one was 4, but I've seen some locations that imported 6 over there. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see whether or not Maximum Tune is really coming west. But as far as I know from the information that I received from Bandai Namco, none of these games that I'm talking about right here are coming to IAPA. And that's another thing to stress too, is none of the games, as far as I am aware, that I'm going to be covering from here on out, except for the exA-Arcadia stuff, is going to be at IAPA, and it's not going to be coming out west, at least for the time being. Now, that always can change. It's just right now what's going to be at this expo is focused on Japan, their market there. There might be some sales into Southeast Asia, where there's oftentimes a lot of distribution of Japanese-made arcade games there, but it's just not a guarantee to the West, aside from the occasional import. But oftentimes what I like to focus on is what is official, just because that is what you're most likely going to come across, as opposed to just, say, 1 or 2 arcades in the entire country getting a game. And so that is what Bandai Namco will have. Oh, including Penla Live, their new what is it was called? Ted, you'll have to probably help me out here. Is it Watogi sticks or something? Something about like Japanese rave sticks, or the lighting LED sticks and stuff, where it's a rhythm game that uses those. Looks innovative, looks fun, and there's some footage out there of it. It's you can see it on the screen here. Or at least the text. Penla Live is what it's called. They also have a cooking game called Tenkipaki Kitchen, which, who knows, Wotage sticks? Wotage? That's my Westerner stuff coming through. I've studied Japanese before, but it's been a while since I've had Japanese class. And so... anyways, that's Bandai Namco. Konami is also in the cards. They are going to have a booth there with stuff like the new Pop-In Music cabinet, Super Punch Mania, Gashan, and Demon Slayer Nichirin Battle Slash, which is this game that you see on here. Yeah, it is a tongue twister. And Demon Slayer, well, I guess Konami, one thing to note is earlier this year, I got a message from a distributor set up out in the West, a U.S. distributor, where Konami had contacted them and given them a pricing list, and it also had dates for a bunch of different Konami arcade machines, brand new ones. And it looked like that they were planning on doing U.S. distribution for a bunch of their games, including the latest DDR. and some other rhythm games at the beginning of 2026. Now, that there's an asterisk next to that just because they said, hey, we don't want this publicized yet. We're just want you to let certain buyers who might be interested in this stuff to know. And then B, as far as I'm still aware, there's no Konami presence being set up at IAAPA, which is where it's like if you were going to be launching a new effort into the States at the beginning of 2026, then you would want to be at IAAPA. Now, again, there might be a surprise. There might be a distributor that's set up there. At IAAPA, there's oftentimes several distributors who have big booths that have a bunch of product. One that comes to mind is Player One Amusement Group, who was purchased not too long ago by Genda, who they are going to have some Japanese-made arcade games there, such as the Kittleton capsules and such. There still hasn't been any indication that they'll have Konami stuff there, but again, keep an eye out for it just in case. Now, it's also possible that Konami could have changed their plans and shifted things around, and so maybe they just weren't able to figure out distribution yet, but there's still a plan on it, or they likely will have representatives at the show. They just may not have product at the show. That's what happened last year. Is I remember I was walking around and some different people kept asking me, hey, have you seen the Konami guys walking around yet? And it's like, nope, I haven't. And so I wasn't able to talk with them and find out what their intentions were, other than making a good educated guess that they were there scouting out what it is they could do to do a return to the market. But as we've also covered on the blog, they've been testing out several different games at Round 1 USA's throughout the year. The new Contra Burst, and I think Gashen was also tested out, the Super Punch Mania, all that stuff. And so again, there are some pretty strong indicators that they're looking at supporting more than just Round 1 USA. But still, until we have like a Konami booth and official Konami distribution here, it's really hard to say. But either way, I would put it into the maybe category. At the very least, when it comes to Round 1 USA, sure, you'll find a lot of these games here. I would be shocked if there isn't a strong effort to bring the Demon Slayer arcade game, which also vends out cards, to the States, just because of how well that recent movie did, Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, being the best performing, best earning anime film of all time, and also the best performing in the U.S. domestic box office as well. And so even though this game doesn't look like it's too complex, it's almost more like a redemption game as far as I can tell. I mean, a little bit more complex than your typical American redemption game, but still it's not going to be like a Border Break style game or the Gundam Battle Pods or anything like that. But still, you can get collectible cards out of it. You know, there's a chance. You're saying there's a chance. All right, Sega. This is the 60th anniversary. This year is the 60th anniversary of crane machines in Japan. And, of course, there's been a huge trend for clawcades, which are arcades that are just full of crane machines, maybe a few merchandisers and stuff like that. And so Sega, in celebrating the 60th anniversary of the crane machine, they are celebrating with the UFO Catcher Museum. As you see through this render here, plenty of UFO catcher games. The museum, I believe it has UFO catchers from all throughout their history, which I think, what was that? It was 1980. It came out in the 1980s sometime. I can't remember the exact date on that one. And then they'll have the immersive UFO catcher, where it looks to recreate the sensation of being lifted by the crane, though not physically, in a Floor is Lava-like group game. So that probably be interesting. They'll also have a big screen version of Chunithan, as that game turns 10, and we would probably see something about My DX, the latest version of that. which by all accounts that's performing very well. Lots of locations picking it up. It's not having the same sort of technical issues that Taiko no Tatsujin has been having on the market out there by what I've heard through the grapevine. And so there be things like that. But as you can probably tell, there's not a lot of like dedicated video game stuff that's really showing up here. And unfortunately, Sega, after 2020 and all the shakeouts that happened there, they really gutted their arcade division. Some of the people that worked on games moved over into consoles. Some retired. Yes, there is still the Western arm of Sega, which is not actually owned by Sega Japan anymore. They did a management buyout back in 2021 under the guidance of the now late Paul Williams, who just passed away a short time ago. And but that company licenses out the Sega name and represents Sega out here in the West. And so the Sega booth at IAPA is going to be completely different, but it's going to be full of games, both video and redemption games, and probably some claw machines, but no UFO catchers. I'm not really sure why they kind of eschew the UFO catcher brand out west, because by all accounts I've heard it's still popular even at places like Round 1 USA. But yeah. And then also, as it mentions in the text here, there are some kids-focused stuff, kidtainment as we sometimes call that, with like Paw Patrol, Curious George pieces. At IAPA last year, Bandai Namco surprised us by having like a Taiko no Tatsujin kiddie ride, as well as a Gator Panic kiddie ride. It was a little strange, but still, it's like stuff like that can sell pretty well. And the company who used to dominate the space for kiddie rides, Falgus, after one of their principal, I don't remember if they were a founder or they were just like one of the higher ups, passed away a few years back. The company's just not been the same since, and they've not been making the same strides. So it seems like it's left kind of a vacuum there for kiddie rides. I mean, they're still very popular and whatnot out there. It's just, it seems to be a little more decentralized compared to where it was. And it seems like some Japanese companies like Sega, Bandai Namco have been taking notice of that and making some moves there. And of course, we've seen through Sega Amusements, there was the Sonic the Hedgehog kiddie ride a few years back where it had a molded 3D version of Sonic, who fortunately did not look like the original Sonic the movie, the bizarre one there. But he looked like just like a regular Sonic the Hedgehog on a car that kids could race with on a kiddie ride. But yeah. And then we have Taito. And Taito, they've been kind of a sad case for me because they were bought by Square Enix back in 2006, and ever since then their output of brand new content for the arcade industry has just dwindled down to a trickle. For the most part, they've been more of a company that's focused on just licensing out their IP for other companies to do stuff with. One famous, maybe semi-infamous example from a few years ago was the Elevator Action Invasion that Eunice did, which was, as I recall, loosely based on the Elevator Action arcade game that Taito had done in 2009, which had actual elevator doors open and close in front of the screen. The only problem was those broke down a lot as the game got older, and so that made the game a little unplayable when you have this door halfway closed in front of the game screen, which sucks. But the Eunice version didn't have that. It just used a virtual version of doors. But still, the game was a little... It needed some polish work on it to be a great game. And but anyways, they've also done stuff in recent times like Music Diver, which has been available at Round 1 USA, and I even played it there. And it was actually a lot of fun. I liked it. My daughter liked it, who is into rhythm games a little bit. They've also done Street Fighter 6 Type Arcade. However, I heard from everything I've heard through the grapevine of people who do operate arcades in Japan, is it sounds like Street Fighter 6 arcade has just been a total dud out there, where exA-Arcadia fighters like Axel City 2 have exceeded its earnings by quite a bit. And other ones like Guilty Gear have also outperformed Street Fighter 6, which, as I've talked about before on the blog here on different videos, that just fighting games, if there's no significant difference between the arcade version and the console version, it just doesn't work. And it's not going to. You just can't expect it to. But a lot of people in the fighting game community just do not want to allow for there to be a unique arcade version with content that's only available in the arcade. And so, but then they complain, well, the arcade is dead or whatever. And it's like, well, if you would allow the arcade to have exclusive content, then that would give reason for people, such as gamers, to come to the arcade and play the games. And so that's the point I try to get across a lot. But anyways, Taito does have some stuff at their booth this year. In this particular render, it's missing something that I came across a little bit afterwards, right before I published the post. But that includes, they have a horror-themed attraction with, I would call it mixed reality, where it's using projection, mapping and all that, and it's called Welcome to the Death Game. Probably playing a little bit on Squid Game and stuff like that. They have Getter Spin D, a prize machine, and a couple of other things along those lines. But one thing that they were promoting, and this is the thing that I caught right before hitting publish, is that so 2026 is going to be the 40th anniversary for Bubble Bobble, which came out in 1986. And apparently, in addition to doing a historical display, which I assume would have different versions of Bubble Bobble throughout the years that you could play, they also have this Bubble Bobble Sugar Dungeons, and they said they'd have a demo of it. Now, it's not 100% clear to me if that means they're just putting a console demo out for you to play, like if it's on the Switch or Switch 2 or PS4, PS5, something like that, or if it would actually have an arcade version of it. I would obviously prefer that myself. And whether or not it would be something that's coming to their Nessica system, which by all accounts I've heard is mostly dead. But we'll find out soon enough, because we do actually have somebody who is not going to be attending IAPA, who does send us information, who will be attending the Japan Amusement Expo. And so we should have more information on this coming up soonish and whatnot. But yeah, that's the Japan Amusement Expo. As mentioned, exA-Arcadia will not be there. To cover them really quick, they've actually just started shipping out 2 new fighting games. Actually, more than that, really. But there's 2 that we haven't done a story on yet. I was kind of waiting until we had permission to go ahead with the exA-Arcadia IAPA preview, where I'd mentioned them, but I'll take this opportunity to mention that Chaos Code Nemesis Experiment, also known as Chaos Code Next, which is a sequel to Chaos Code EXA, is now shipping, as well as Axel City 2 The Final Storm, which is a major update to the very successful, by all accounts that I've heard. I've even know of an arcade here in the United States. It's not my own. I'm one of the few that have an exA-Arcadia, but there's another one where he's had an Axel City 2, and he's told me that it performs exceptionally well for a fighting game, and he was very surprised by that. But either way, Axel City 2 The Final Storm is essentially Axel City 2.5. It adds 10 more fighters, adds more stages, and more balancing and all that stuff. That is also shipping out. As is, this would really be number 3, but we already reported on this. Hunter x Hunter Nen Impact. I learned you're not supposed to pronounce the X there. It has also been shipping out there, and so yeah, if you're into fighting games and you say you have an arcade near you that has like a Street Fighter or a Tekken or a Soul Calibur 2 or something like that, you can say, hey, you guys should get one of these new exA-Arcadia fighting games, and then maybe they'll get one near you. But what's also really cool to me, this is the first time I recall that they've done this, is as you can see on the screen here, they're offering bundles. So if you want to get the original Chaos Code as well as the sequel, you can do that and save some money instead of because if you bought these separately, I mean, heck, that would save you over $1,000. It's a great deal, really. And they also have a bundle for both Axel City 2 and the Final Storm if you wanted to do that. And so, yeah. But one thing I could throw out there as far as exA-Arcadia goes is that all these new releases will be at IAAPA 2025, and that's another reason why we do promote, push exA-Arcadia a lot. Even though they're not an Arcade Heroes advertiser, I look at them just as they're one of the few companies that are still pushing non-redemption video games out there, and I want to see that succeed. I want to see players come back and play actual video games as opposed to just coming and playing for prizes and stuff. But it's like they're the only company that's bringing true real fighting games back to the scene, or true real shoot 'em up games like Eartheon Exa. But all these games that are new releases will be at IAAPA, which also includes like Demon Bride X Again, which as I recall, I played that last year at the show. I played Jam and Jelly. I've got footage of all these most of these games on my channel. Like if you were to scroll through, like Air Gallet, and I think I have an earlier video of Cambria Sword. I probably don't have a release version of that. I have a very early video of Vanguard Princess R, which was at IAAPA last year, but it was like super early, and so the game will have changed quite a bit since then. So I'll be grabbing more footage of that. I've got footage of Axel City 2, but don't have footage of the Final Storm yet. Don't have footage of Hunter x Hunter, nor do I have of Chaos Code Next. Although I used to own Chaos Code EXA, I actually sold it to the guy that I just mentioned a moment ago, and he. Yeah, that's where I had some direct footage of Chaos Code EXA there, but I've been thinking about Chaos Code Next, perhaps. I don't know yet. As I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, if you came in a little late, I'm actively looking at moving out of my location right now, which will be a very expensive endeavor. So gonna have to batten down the hatches and such, but yeah, we'll see what I might be able to do here in the future. But anyways, Chaos Code. One very other interesting thing about both Chaos Code Next and Axel City 2: The Final Storm is these are 100% exclusive to the exA-Arcadia, aka they're 100% exclusive to arcades. There's no console port that these are based on whatsoever. Now, it is true that Chaos Code EXA did have some previous versions. It was like a director's cut, which included all the content from all the versions, as well as some better balancing and such, which really made it exclusive. It's just you could still get a somewhat watered down experience, like I think on the PS4. But with Chaos Code 2, no, there's no PS4 version or PS5 version or Switch 2, anything like that. And none has been announced. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't mean that it won't eventually show up on consoles, but at least for now, these are truly exclusive to the platform. I don't think Axel City 2 exists in any form on consoles or PC, but then, of course, the Final Storm even more so. And Vanguard Princess R is based on an older game. I can't remember the full details on that. I get it a little bit mixed up with like the Suka 120%, which I can't remember which one of those had like a Saturn version. But it's still, EXA's done a really good job at upgrading these, correcting bugs, getting the input lag way down, like much faster than what you would experience on consoles. Because on consoles they usually just don't really care about input lag, and so these are the best editions of the games that you could come across. But there will be more that is going to be showing up at IAAPA. Hopefully we'll be able to tout that before too long. I guess before we end the stream, we don't have a whole lot more to cover here, but Amusement Source International, it's been a little bit uneven as to what it is that they're going to be bringing to the show, because at one point they were saying they were going to bring upwards of 20 machines, and then I saw recently it was like 11, and then I saw a different number, and it's kind of all over the place. But this is a company based out of Texas. The CEO or the founder of Amusement Source International used to be the CEO of GameWorks. And he's been really good at importing games, mainly from China. A lot of these are redemption style games, but there are some pure video games as well, such as Wild Hunting, which is by Ace Amusements, a up-and-coming developer out of China. And this is the first real challenger that we've seen to the Big Buck Hunter series since Sega had their Extreme Hunting game, but that was like 2006 was the last time anybody really tried a hunting game out there. So we'll see how this one goes, if it will really pose a challenge to Raw Thrills' series or not. I don't know that they're losing sleep over it, but yeah, they'll have a big booth space and some of the video stuff to look at, including Skull of Shadow, which, even though I keep wanting to say that Skull of Shadow is like Dead Storm Pirates, it really isn't. It's more like Jumanji. It's kind of strange like that, because like in all the promotions it looks like a skeleton pirate type game, but when you play the game itself, it's like, this feels like they tried to do Jumanji as a light gun shooting game. And but of course Sega had the Jumanji license. Now, one of the last things I'm going to cover here, unless you guys have something else you want to bring up, feel free to bring something up in the chat as to what you want to see. What for coverage is, here are the Best New Product Award finalists for the IAPA Brass Ring Award. The Brass Ring Award is a prestigious award that is given out in several different categories to new products and such that appear at the show. And so these are the finalists. We'll find out, I think it might be the second day of the show, maybe the third, as to who actually wins these, because they do have judges that go around the show floor, go visit the finalists, and make their final judgments there. But we have the Airtime Coaster, the Argo Mini Golf Platform, Bowler Entertainment System. I mean, some of these things aren't arcade games. Blue Mar Basins. Build Alive looks like an interactive sort of table. Maybe it's projection mapping. Maybe it's just a giant touch screen. Not sure. It looks like it's made for kids. Case Pro, which is originally I made the mistake of calling this a 3D printer vending machine, but it's actually just a it has pre-made cases for the latest iPhone or latest Samsung Galaxy device, but what you can do is it has a high quality printer on it, and it'll print any photo that you send to the machine on it. And so this was at IAPA last year. Was very popular. All sorts of people were doing prints, either of like most of them were their dog. This was at the Amusement Source International booth, and so that's what it looks like they're doing. You've got Clip and Win, which is a merchandiser that Eunice has. Clown Around. This is an interesting one. We did do a story on this on the blog earlier this week. This will be at the AVS Company's booth. What it is it's a miniaturized 5-minute escape room. And it's already been on test. From what they said from the testing, they didn't have any problems with people like breaking the stuff inside or stealing anything. But they did say that everything is locked down with like airline type cable. But the goal of that is you go into the booth, it locks it. There is a way to get out of it in case you get too scared or have a panic attack or whatever. But you have 5 minutes to solve the mystery and clown around. It's like there's a bunch of clowns and you have to determine which clown murdered some other clown, I think it is. But looks like one of the more innovative things out there. That's going to be at the show. Looks like Cyberpunk 2077 Turf Wars, that's by LAI Games, is going to be up for the award as well. I'll be curious to see how this one will have progressed, because I haven't seen it since Amusement Expo, where it was a slightly earlier version. Again, you have some other stuff for theme parks and such. eClaw 2.0, I've been seeing ELOT promoting this a little bit. Not sure what makes it different than any other crane machine out there. Guess we'll find out. A gameplay theater, Ghostly Manor. I wonder if this is one of the things that Triotech has been touting, because they've been promoting that they're going to have a few new things at the show. Hot Wheels Ultimate Speedway. I guess in a way I'm doing some of the IAPA preview here. I'll just cover this so I don't have to cover it later, so it saves me a little bit of time from the 3 or 4 hours of when we do that. Icy Slush Rush, which did debut at IAPA last year, but started shipping out earlier this year. That's up for an award. Crazy Arrows, which looks like projection mapping blended with soft tip archery. I've seen a few different soft tip archery things here and there before, but at least just from this photo, this looks to be one of the more complex and polished ones. And it is a little strange to me where you have things like projectors or fog machines up for awards, but they must be doing something in their category that's innovative. It's just, as an arcade guy, I don't pay attention to that stuff. So, as well as like cool water slides. I mean, just as a consumer, some of these water slide concepts look pretty cool to me. Although I've never seen like a full water slide set up at IAPA. It's usually just like a display with photos or videos of, hey, this is what we're building, or this is what we installed at the theme park earlier this year. Go and check it out if you ever visit this one theme park somewhere. Got a suspended dark ride. Wonder if that might be Triotech. VR paraglider, one of the few VR things I've heard about. There's not a whole lot of that anymore. Like originally I'd been saying, yeah, there's so much VR at the show that they should have a separate section, but I guess I was wrong about that, because now there's so little VR that there wouldn't be any point in having a whole VR section of the show. So, yeah, it's what happens when certain things don't do well. But... yeah, I mean, as far as I'm aware, if you want to win the Brass Ring Award, you have to have the game at the show. If you don't bring it, then you won't win it. So, I mean, it is possible that if for some reason one of these things wasn't at a booth, that it could be due to freight problems and whatnot. But, I mean, I would guess, I would assume that Cyberpunk would be at IAPA just because it wasn't at IAPA last year. And now, obviously, they are going to be, LAI is going to be promoting a lot of other stuff that is brand new. But they usually do have things that are just still in production that might have been introduced at a prior show that's not out the door yet. But let's see, just checking the chat here. Yeah, I mean, for the ELOT crane, what is that, the eClaw 2.0, I think they called it. I've just been seeing some teases on LinkedIn. So I guess tip, if you're really curious about the arcade industry and seeing what's going on, is the arcade industry's gotten really into sharing stuff on LinkedIn. I kind of hate LinkedIn because the algorithm is just really dumb, as it will show you stuff from 2-3 weeks ago, but it's presenting it as, hey, this just happened, but then you look at the date and it's like, oh, that was, it's no longer relevant anymore as far as this being news or something. And so that's frustrating. And there's some other things about it that annoy me. But still, that's where, for whatever reason, a lot of like manufacturers and distributors and operators begun congregating. And so that's where sometimes you see little previews of stuff. And sometimes new locations, too. I've been surprised by how many locations I learn about through LinkedIn these days. But, yeah, the little teases they've been posting on LinkedIn do look a little different as well, where it looks like there's more LED lighting in the black console space. But again, it's like, when I see crane machines being touted for innovation, I'm just like, okay, it looks different. I've always hated writing about crane machines because it's like, well, it's got different artwork on it than this other one, but as far as the functionality goes, it's a crane machine. It's like talking about pool tables or air hockey tables. For the most part, there's almost no difference between them, and so that sometimes it's a little silly. But anyways, anything else that anybody wants to talk about before we end this mini preview live stream? I haven't had anybody. Well, it looks like I've got somebody trying to call me here. And it's almost 1 o'clock, my time. Yeah, I did notice that Elot was promoting their crane with Mario plush, where it's like, yeah, maybe if it was a Mario branded crane machine, that would be something slightly different. It's been a while since we've seen Nintendo get together with whether it's pinball or video games or just something in the arcade industry. It's just, I'm sure the licensing process for anything Nintendo, at least from what I've heard from a few people who've been involved there, it's very tough. Like, even April Fool's jokes, you can't really do that because just Nintendo Japan doesn't get it, I guess, which is weird. But, yeah. Anyhow, that is it for this stream. Again, be doing an IAPA preview here soon. Don't know 100% when yet. I'm just waiting for information on a few others to come through. We're going to publish it on the blog first because I'll be using that as kind of my script to go through. I would like to do it tomorrow, but it might not be tomorrow. It might be Saturday where I do it. Stay tuned to our Discord server as well as social media, whether it's X or Facebook or LinkedIn. And I'll be posting about it there. I'll try and give a better heads up so that it's just not coming out as a big surprise or anything. But yeah, I do know one thing with the camera is I was doing some testing before I started the stream is I turned the exposure on so that you could actually see me. But then the frame rate dropped to like 2 to 5 a second, and it was really bad. So for some reason, this camera just doesn't like the exposure. But I will see if there's a way for me to get some additional lighting in here. Because at the very least, my internet connection's good, assuming there's nothing else. I think yesterday there was something about a solar storm that was causing some outages out there across the world, like even Google Drive had been affected or something along those lines. So assuming that the sun cooperates with us and and that weather's good and all that, then should be good to go. But yeah, stay tuned for that. If there's anything else you guys want to see through the IAPA coverage, I'll be there all week next week, assuming that my flight won't have been delayed. I know with the U.S. government shutdown just ending last night, it sounds like it's still going to take some time for stuff to catch up, and so it's like that could potentially still delay my flight. I'm not sure. So fingers crossed. And for anybody else out there who's seeing this who is headed to IAPA, wish you safe travels and all that. Also, stay tuned to the social media. I will try throughout the week to maybe post some stuff. It'll be easiest for me to probably post to Discord. And so if you're not familiar with the Arcade Heroes Discord, there should be a link on our website that takes you there. I think at the bottom of the site where we have different ways to interact and such. But yeah, maybe I need to put a Discord thing up here where our social media channels are. But either way, look forward to it. And I guess I need to save my voice for the rest of that time. That's the one problem when I talk for like 3 hours straight. It's a little tough to do that. But thank you guys for watching. We'll see you